Merriam-Webster defines a scapegoat as one that bears the blame for others, and that is the object of irrational hostility. I once did a stream about people not having the power to make others like them, and I still believe this, that it is ultimately up to the woman if she wants to go on a date with you or not. I control what I do, and the other people control what they do. For example, if I were to turn down a woman who was seeking a date, it would be universally agreed that I was the one to blame for the date not taking place. No one would tell this woman in this hypothetical scenario that she was at fault for a decision that I made. My point of mentioning this example is to show the irrational hostility deposited toward men who make it known that they have had a difficult time with getting a date. People are so irrational and antagonistic that they will both blame you for a date not taking place if you turn down a woman and if you get turned down by a woman. Being able to find a woman innocent in the same scenario that you find me guilty in is irrational, but I know why you do it. I've paid a lot of attention to the detractors of my commentary on this issue, and the main reason for doing that was because I am someone who believes in debate, that sometimes a person may bring up counterpoints or arguments that I might not have considered, but what often ends up transpiring in place of these critiques is a lambasting of my physical appearance. Recently on a stream, I had a user insist that all I had to do was start going to the gym so that I can improve myself, because when you have a physique, you stand out a lot more than someone with an average build or overweight, and that COVID was not really a reason not to stay in shape and good health. After I pushed back on this recommendation, this user asserted that I should try something new and not be content with being mediocre. I find it extremely strange that his response to a man who criticized the behavior of women is to write paragraphs about the appearance of that man. But it makes sense if you're trying to turn me into a scapegoat. Oh, you must have been turned down because you weren't in enough shape. I'm never going to believe that you have to be in shape to get with a woman. There are men in this world and even on this website who are married and who admit to being overweight. Secondly, I've found it comical that he would mention staying in shape and good health when he has no idea what my health is, unless he recently became my physician or gained access to my medical records. And even then, he's not telling me to go to the gym because he has proof that I'm ill or I'll keep being sick if I don't go. It's all to get with a woman. Pay special attention to the last part of my recap of his comments. He wrote that I should try something new because what I did in the past didn't work. If someone gets turned down for years on both the computer and in real life, I think you can reasonably conclude that they didn't do the same things every time they spoke to a woman, and maybe this is why they stopped, because they became tired of second-guessing themselves while getting no results year after year. But also note that he called me mediocre, a word that means something of moderate or low quality, value, ability, or performance. He essentially wrote that I, as a person, am of low quality or value because I'm not with a woman. I am supposed to view myself as being of lesser quality than my contemporaries, not because of something I did, such as steal, murder someone, or another crime against humanity, but because of the decisions made by women to not date me. According to him, that should be the determining factor in my self-worth. My video entitled How Romance Dehumanizes Men applies here because everything else that I do or enjoy is supposed to be rendered either obsolete or inconsequential because I'm not in a relationship. That's supposed to be the ultimate goal of every man, and you're supposed to dedicate hours of your life to a random woman that this man on the computer is promising you will magically appear once you start going to some place or doing something that he wants you to do. I have another term called bad faith assuming, which I define as being when people who want to believe you made some fatal mistake while trying to court women create reasons for why you weren't successful that are not fact-based. I had two users in the past accuse me of approaching women in a weird way, or ones that were out of my league without ever having seen me approach or seen what any of these women looked like. This person who demeaned me as being mediocre for not being with a woman would later refuse to believe the idea that I could have gone to the gym in the past. And while I didn't say this during the stream, if I'm applying his logic, then I shouldn't believe anything that he typed in my chat about himself. He had a picture of some random ball player, meaning that I didn't see what he looked like and if his appearance was that of a gym attending person. And he didn't provide proof that he was even successful at getting a date, let alone a relationship. So the people who won't believe me when I speak about my experiences want me to believe them when they speak about theirs. How is that fair? It isn't, but neither is anything else that they're trying to do. Let's take that mediocre comment and run with it, as I have an example to illustrate how insane that comment truly was. John Wayne Gacy murdered over 30 young men and boys before being caught. Prior to these arrests, he was married twice and had 2 children from these relationships. The reason I'm mentioning him is because I was told on my stream that I am a mediocre man for not being in a relationship. So by that logic, Gacy, a man who murdered over 24 people, is not a mediocre man because he was in relationships and thereby got himself in the door with women. This is the natural evolution of that man's argument. Remember, you are automatically mediocre because you're not with a woman. So even this person that killed loads of people for no reason is your superior simply because he was in relationships. Let's take it a step further, because you could argue that Gacy's wives didn't know about his murderous behavior and thus should not be counted. Richard Ramirez killed 14 people in the span of a year in Los Angeles, and after being found guilty of these homicides, got married to a woman who said she would kill herself when his execution was carried out. According to computer clown logic, I am worse than a person who killed over a dozen people for no reason because I'm not in a relationship. There's an alternative reason for why I mentioned Ramirez. People online, in their lack of any sense of the most rudimentary knowledge of human complexity, will see or hear about men having a difficult time getting with a woman and assert that they have an unlikable or unappealing personality. They will say or type this without having ever met any of these men, because again, it's bad faith assuming, done by these people for the purpose of you as the man becoming the scapegoat for the decisions of other people. Oh, if your personality was more interesting, women would have flocked to you, so you must be unappealing. I've never claimed to be a perfect person, but if my flaws prevent me from going on some homicidal rampage, I'll take them. I'm sure whatever personality I may be assessed to have by people online who have never met me can't be any worse than a man who killed people for no reason. That's at the center of my argument, that this obsession that people want to have with demonizing men who can't get into a relationship leads them to these weird conclusions that are contradicted by reality. Women throughout human history have been into all kinds of different men, and you're really going to tell me that I have some set of characteristics that is so uniquely deterring for them, even as they're doing the same thing to countless other men? In the comic strip Peanuts, there is a running gag where Charlie Brown tries to kick a football held down by Lucy before she removes the ball and he flies in the air and hurts himself on the ground. I find this running gag analogous of the romance situation where you as a man are gassed up by other men to keep talking to women who turn you down, and are then made by these men to feel ashamed of yourself despite you being the only one who is trying to compromise or make an effort. This is what men online want my fate to be, as they're upset because I don't bother talking to a bunch of women who do the same thing every year. I'm supposed to keep trying after seeing no progress, to be on this endless loop of approaching, getting turned down, and getting blamed online forever. I had a woman who I gained a lot of respect for because she said something that I wish more people would try to understand. She stated that if she were a man and she approached women, got turned down over and over again, sometimes by ones that seemed to be interested by how much they complimented her, came online to talk about it and got criticized for seemingly not being appealing enough as other men trashed her appearance and made assumptions about her, she would have quit too. And she would have quit because, as she put it, she found nothing appealing about being attacked for someone else's decisions. Relationships, be they platonic or romantic, are meant to be optional parts of life that you attempt to form with other people because they enhance your existence. They're not meant to be an excuse for people who've never met you to make up BS as to why you don't have them. They're not meant to make you the perpetrator of someone else's choice to not be with you, nor are they meant to enable others to pretend you're an awful person for not being in one, despite the fact that various domestic terrorists, like the two I mentioned earlier, were in them. I have to confess I made a mistake, which was believing that women were human, that like men, they were made of bone and blood. By the commentary I've read online, I'd be led to believe there's some higher deity I wasn't aware of. Imagine me telling a woman that she's mediocre because she's not with a man. I would have been called sexist, misogynist, and part of the patriarchy. So why is it okay when someone gets to tell me that my self-worth is determined by if I'm able to convince a woman to court me? I'd like to know who crowned random women and getting their approval to go on a date, the purveyors of whether a man is of lesser quality than his contemporaries. But I guess as long as people want someone to blame, they'll keep finding faults in men they've never met so they can have an endless stream of romance scapegoats.